Hello, and welcome to I Hate Your Movie, a podcast where we inflict films upon each other for entertainment purposes. Just want to give you a warning at the start of this. This film I've chosen this week is called The Breadwinner. It's about a girl growing up in a Taliban-occupied area of Kabul. It involves lots of violence on women, it involves terrorism, and if you're listening to this episode for our usual fun, happy-go-lucky kind of content, this probably will not be it.
So in short, this is the episode that's going to get me cancelled.
We watched The Breadwinner. It's an animation made by the Irish animation studio Cartoon Saloon, and it's directed by Norma Twomey, and I think it's a very good film. What were your thoughts on it?
Here's my one-sentence review. Misery might love company, but audience doesn't love misery.
Okay.
I did not like this movie.
You did not like this movie? Okay, that's interesting.
It falls into that category of Forrest Gump, Schindler's List.
Okay. People love Forrest Gump.
I know.
Pure misery is Requiem for a Dream. For me, is pure misery.
Requiem for... There's a lot of movies that came to my mind. 90s dark cartoons, like All Dogs Go to Heaven, things like that.
I've not heard of that.
Mouse Tale, which is like just miserable. It's like a kid's film that's just miserable. There's nothing fun happening in it whatsoever. And I watched all of those in the 90s, and I hated them. Also, a very good comparison is Grave of Fireflies. Have you ever seen that?
No.
It's basically the Japanese version of this. It's an anime about a family during World War II, and it doesn't even depict the Hiroshima thing. It depicts like the firebombing of Japan,
Okay.
which is like sending down little firebombs and destroying cities and towns, and follows one of these families. Half of them die.
Right.
That happens in the beginning, so not spoiler. It follows the remaining kid and his little sister just trying to survive. Very, very, very similar to me. It falls into that category of those kind of movies for me, which is I respect it more than I like it.
Okay. Yeah, it's a fair point. So the reason I chose this film is obviously we sit here and we make jokes about films for the podcast. It's important that films cover real issues and shine a light on the things that are actually happening in the world, and not in some kind of like overly dramatized action way or comedy way, or they just show slices of what people are actually going through.
Mm-hmm. I would say this is a propaganda film.
A propaganda film.
Yeah, but like in the original meaning of the word, propaganda has this very negative connotation. There's good propaganda.
Okay.
This is a good propaganda film. It's just not targeted to me. It's targeted to a soccer mom in Arizona who's a bit racist.
Right.
And she watches this film and is like, oh, sad little girl. And her mind changes a bit.
Okay.
But for me, it's very shallow.
Shallow?
Yeah, I would say it's shallow. I don't enjoy movies where there's not a variety of emotions, or at least some sort of deep dive into some sort of topic or theme.
I think this is quite a deep dive into a specific topic of what's happening. The film's set in 2001, just before the War on Terror.
Yeah.
And so do you not think it says enough about that period of time? It justifies itself?
No.
No?
I didn't think it said anything unique that a person who casually reads news wouldn't know.
Okay, yeah. I think there's a big difference between knowing something and then seeing it portrayed.
Yeah. I think in that way I would prefer like a documentary.
Okay.
If it's a film and if it has like artistic merit, it should go deeper in some way. I think there was lots of avenues to explore that the movie didn't explore. Like, for example, it could have explored the politics more, how this comes about. Or if it wants to stay in the kind of misery lane, it could have explored the main girl's psyche more. Or what happens when she grows up and she starts showing, female qualities. Like, what happens then? She can't disguise herself as a boy anymore. I needed something a little bit more to attach myself into.
Yeah, I think it shows her psyche enough in that she's just a kid, and that a lot of the times she doesn't really realize the danger she's in. Obviously, for a lot of it, she does, but like, you know, the film stops enough times to see her childlike wonder at like the finding the candy on the floor and stuff like that, to remind you that actually this is just a kid, and that's her mentality, as well as like the responsibility of providing for her family at such a young age.
It didn't do much for me. It's, again, I respect it more, and I was really miserable watching it.
Yeah, which is the point.
I know it is the point, but those really one-sided films really don't work for me.
Okay.
If you take a miserable film that works, Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind.
Yeah.
Like, that's a miserable movie that has more going on and more things to think about and more things to kind of let yourself into the themes. Grave of Fireflies, the one I mentioned.
Yeah.
The anime version of this, basically. I think what it does better than this movie is that it shows the two characters who are struggling to live really explore every avenue they could. And I felt that was a bit lacking in this.
Okay. So I think this is probably, you know, we've gone through the highest rated films that we don't like. I think this probably, of the actual episodes, probably one of the highest rated films online that we've done. So it's 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb, 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, so let's get into it.
Yeah.
About how the film goes. It has an intro scene where there's a person and they're inside like lots of clouds, the red clouds. It comes back to it later. It's not really relevant at this point. I don't know why they started the film with that, because so throughout the film, while what's going on with the main characters, the main girl Pavana is telling a story. She tells a story to various different peoples about a boy who defeats an elephant on a mountain.
Yes.
When it actually starts, you see Pavana and her father, Narula, trying to sell some goods on a rug.
Yeah.
This really introduces you to all the characters. So they're selling a really nice top that was bought for Pavana, or maybe it was handed down from her older sister, and Pavana never got to wear it, but the family had so little money they had to sell it. It's a really nice top.
I like the idea of that, which is it kind of represents femininity, and they try to sell it in this like really oppressive male-dominated regime. Or it's kind of nonsensical in a way.
Okay.
Whereas like you're trying to sell a pretty female thing to a place where you can't wear pretty female things, but I kind of like that.
Maybe the implication is that the older sister wore it before this kind of regime came in, because like you say, now they're not allowed to wear it. It's no point in having it, so they're selling it.
I got that. It's just like, I was thinking, what would you do with it if you're gonna buy that? The only reason I can think of is like a at-home use.
Yeah, they wear it around the house.
Yeah.
So Pavana doesn't want to be there, and then her father starts telling her a story, and you get introduced to kind of their perspective of what's happening in their country and what's happened in their country. And the main theme of his story is that they're always on the border of two fighting empires. So they're always caught in the crossfire of any kind of like conflict that happens in Europe or the world.
Yeah, because they live along the Silk Road, which is this like very famous and very, very old, probably the oldest trade route in the world. It's weird that he talks about the Silk Road as it's his culture. The Silk Road for me is like a trade and political thing rather than like a cultural identity.
Okay. So the whole thing's based on a book. Deborah Ellis wrote the book, and she travelled all around Pakistan and Afghan refugee camps, and the stories from that kind of got turned into the book, which got turned into this film.
Okay. My feeling was that it was, because it felt so realistic, it was all one real story.
Okay.
But I guess that makes sense as well.
I don't know if you caught at the start as well. So the father's, when he's telling the story about the land, and obviously the land was prosperous, and then you saw the kids get up and start running. So it starts running, 4 of them get up and start running, and then 2 of them don't make it to the end. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah.
And there's loads of little details in this film that kind of, if you really look into it, is kind of like heartbreaking all along through it.
Yes. I just wrote down sad.
Sad. It is sad.
It is sad, but again, and then what? I guess the only other positive would be like I'm learning about this political situation, but I don't feel like I'm learning anything new, especially now that the Taliban's back. You know, was that a year ago?
Yeah.
when the Taliban's back, and there's all these stories, so it's already in my psyche. There was actually this, I don't want to say hilarious
Oh my god.
article. It is kind of like in a funny, ironic article, which is now that the Taliban's back and they have to do boring office jobs, they bored as shit because they're like, for 20 years, they're like, revolution, we're gonna take over, and killing all sorts everywhere, and, you know, like having the flame and everything. And now they have to sit in the office for 8 hours and like
Do budget reports.
Yeah.
And
It's just funny.
right, so while they're at the market store, this is where we first meet Idris. He doesn't look quite like an adult to me, but he doesn't look, maybe he's like a late teenager.
Yeah, he's got the little mustache.
Yeah, like a little puberty mustache.
A 15-year-old
Yeah,
mustache.
it seems about that age.
Yeah.
He threatens Pavana's father. Pavana's father lost his leg. I can't actually remember why the Taliban guy takes a dislike.
It was that Parvana is outside and she shouldn't be outside and showing her face.
Oh, and she shooed the dog away. That was it as well.
Yeah.
She shouted at the dog because the dog was sniffing at her top.
Yes.
Did you catch as well, like when Idris was threatening the father, he walked on the blanket and he was like stepping on the top.
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
No.
it was like really disrespectful, start to finish.
Mm.
Then we go home and we meet the rest of the family. So Nuria, the sister, and Fatima, the mother. And they have a tiny little brother, kind of infant, 1 or 2 years
Yeah.
old, can barely talk yet, Zaki.
Mhm.
And this is the bit that makes me kind of disagree with you in terms of it's all miserable and it's all one thing. At this point, you meet the family and it's kind of this regular kind of everyday family you'd find anywhere in the world. The sisters are arguing with each other, you know, the dads and the mum are a team, and they're just trying to deal with the fact that their kids are just being kids and arguing. And Pavana makes a joke at one point, like, because she's eating all the raisins from the dish, and the sister is like, don't eat all the raisins, and she's like, well, what about that raisin on your chin?
Okay.
And it's all very like regular family stuff, and you see that against the backdrop of these horrible things that are happening. That makes it enough difference to me for it to be interesting.
For me, it didn't.
Okay.
There's later on a few bits which bring some levity, but it's so late into the movie that it's like I'm lost at that point. I want to talk about, first of all, I like the voice acting.
Yep.
It's very off-putting at first because it's very naturalistic, and that's something you don't usually hear in animations.
Naturalistic.
Yeah, it felt very real in a way where voice acting, you're taught to enunciate, make your point come across in clarity. And this was very naturalistic because it felt like how people talk regularly. And it kind of clashed with the animation, but I liked it. I liked the art style.
Yep.
It's a mix of 2D and 3D animation. As you can see early, there's a car that's 3D and it kind of mixes in with the 2D environment.
Okay, I didn't catch that really.
As its unique art style. It's got its pros and cons. Some people look a bit too similar to me.
Yep.
There's enough variety and enough interesting things to look at. The one thing with that food scene that I noticed is that sometimes they do the show don't tell with the food.
Okay.
Like that they don't have enough food. They show the plate from very high up. Then they show that it's all gone and they give all the raisins to the little boy.
Yep.
And that's enough. But then they say, oh, we don't have enough food yet. We don't have enough food. I was like, oh, that was enough. Like, as a visual.
Yeah, yes and no. I think later on when they say they don't have enough food, the first time they eat, the plate is really, really full and all the meat. And then the second time when they're really running out of food, it's like a third of the size amount of food. But I think, you know, you clarify it because there's less of them now, therefore you have to kind of say that's not enough food.
Mm-hmm. Just a thing I noticed that sometimes it does the show don't tell very well, but sometimes it's a bit too afraid to just linger on the show and it just doubles down, let's tell the audience as well.
So next up is the arrest scene. So the Taliban come to the family's house and they bang down the door and they arrest the father for just any kind of trumped up charges. Just a little background with the film. At this time in the film, it's law that any female member of a family can only go outside if they're with a male member of the family.
Yes.
So they can go out with their older brothers, uncles, fathers, that kind of, but they're not allowed to be out on their own. They're not allowed to buy food. They're not allowed to basically exist outside the home.
They have to wear a complete head-to-toe coverage.
Yeah,
Like
as adults. I think the
yeah.
children can wear head
Yeah.
wraps. So in their situation, the father is the only adult male in their family. And at this point, they've only got a certain amount of food in the house and they're not allowed to leave. And they've got no way of buying food or existing outside of the home. Big problems. The little sister Pavana is allowed out the house to go get water, but that is it.
To me, that felt like a cheeky thing. Like she's not allowed, but it's close enough that she could go out.
Okay.
Because later on, she gets into trouble for that as a girl.
Obviously, being in this situation, out of desperation, the mother, Fatima, tries to go to the prison and tries to talk to the people there to try and get her husband out, but she doesn't make it to the prison. They get caught by this Taliban group of men, and the Taliban is shouting, "Go home, you're not allowed out, you're not allowed out." And the mum is trying to explain, like, I'm trying to talk to my husband, I'm trying to get to my husband, I can't be outside of the house, we're going to starve to death. And the guy's not listening, and he ends up taking the walking stick, because the mum's carrying the father's walking stick, and the Taliban guy just brutally beats her in the street and tells her to go home.
Yeah.
All the while of this, Pavana doesn't see that. I thought that was quite an interesting thing for her not to see it, because she's chasing the photo of her father. Taliban guy rips it up and throws it on the floor, and all the pieces float away.
Yeah.
And Pavana runs and chases them.
Well, she sees the after effect for sure.
Yeah. So they go home, and the mother is in so much pain, she goes and lies down for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And it's at this time you see Pavana get some scissors, and she goes to the bathroom and she starts cutting her hair. She does it quite timidly at first, but then a really good show don't tell moment in here is when the sister goes and helps her.
Yeah, they don't have to communicate, they already have the same idea.
Yeah, they already have the same idea. They know the implications of it. Yeah. They know how dangerous it's going to be. They know the sacrifice about giving up.
Yeah, they know they're in an impossible situation.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked this aspect kind of explored more. Seeing this impossible challenge kind of play out. Like I said, the climax of that would have been like her showing to be a woman, her growing up and becoming a teenager and showing, female traits. And how would that change? That would be like the final challenge, things like that. It's not that kind of film.
No. This is where she starts telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
So she's now the breadwinner for the family, hence the name. She's also looking after her little brother at the same time. What did you think about the story that she tells? Because you're the theme guy. Did you feel like it was in theme enough? Did you feel like it was a complete distraction and unnecessary? Or...
It was neither of that.
Okay.
It was very good up until the end.
Right.
That was what kind of carried me through the story, because I was very miserable, and that's the only thing I really latched onto is the story within the story.
Yep.
But first of all, I love the art style
of the story.
Because
it has a slightly different art style.
It has a very different art style, I think.
You think?
Yeah, I think so. It has this like storybook art style to it. There's like almost cutouts. It reminded me of old socialist Hungarian cartoons.
Okay.
From my childhood. But yeah, it's something I want to talk about at the end, because it just falls short at the end, I think. They had a really good opportunity to kind of explore something with that, and they just fall flat on the face.
Okay. I enjoyed the animation sequences for this, and I enjoyed the story.
Yeah.
But I didn't really see how it related to the main plot.
Well, there's a few ways to do it. You can do the Watchmen, which is like, it's not super connected, but retroactively you see the connections. Or you can do it in a way where it's parallel to the story. And this is what I think they tried to do.
Yeah.
But at the end, it doesn't quite connect, unfortunately.
So now that Pavana is a boy to the rest of the world, this is the bit that I think shows her like being a kid and shows her enjoying this time, because she wasn't allowed in shops before. Now she's allowed in shops, and she goes into the shop and she's all smiling and happy. Oh, can I get some rice? Can I get some raisins? Can I get something? And I think she says, can I get a small amount of raisins? And everybody in the shop's like, ha ha ha, stupid boy. What are you doing? That's a small amount of raisins. What do I do? Just grab a handful and throw them at you? Something like that. That's not a quote by any means. And she's just smiling. She's happy. Yeah. She's ecstatic, because it's a whole new world to her. And she's obviously she's happy to feed her family as well, but you also get the sense of like this childlike wonder of the possibilities of the world now, kind of thing.
I feel like that shop scene was a bit of a missed opportunity. In a way, weirdly, to introduce even more misery to the plot. Because it's weird that it's called the Breadwinner, but they don't seem to struggle for too long. She goes into the shop and like she immediately has the money.
Yeah.
I half expected her to be like counting and, well, you have money for 3 raisins, but not 5.
Yeah.
You know, things like that.
You only have you can only buy this half bag of rice kind of thing, and then she has to go earn more money to.
Yeah, like it was a bit weird where I know it would have been more cliched, but also it's kind of weird where it's like the title doesn't make sense to me in a way, where it's not even about her winning bread, because they seem to have some money.
Yeah, but they have some money, but then she goes out and has all these jobs.
Yeah, this is a good movie to contrast with Grave of Fireflies with, because in Grave of Fireflies they really run out of money and they really have nothing, just nothing at all. And that's why that film is more interesting to me, because they really explore every avenue of let's move, let's ask a relative, let's go to the doctor, let's beg, let's go fishing. They just do all these things, and like intellectually that's interesting to me, like what would I do in that situation. But I felt like this was a missed opportunity to kind of introduce a bit more drama.
Yeah, there is a scene earlier that's kind of like she's first goes to the market as Pavana on her own, and she tries to buy things and she gets chased away and she drops the bag that she was carrying, and when she gets home she's like, oh, I lost the money. And I thought when I first watched it, I was like, well, that was all their money. Now what the fuck are they going to do? But then, like you say, next scene, she's like, slaps a bunch of notes on the counter and I was like, can I get some raisins, please?
Give me them raisins. It would have been melodrama, but it would have been something.
Okay. I think the point of it is to see how she like has to work to get the money. She's out in the world, everything. Like I say, she's seeing the world through a completely different way now, and she runs into a friend of hers
who's also a girl in disguise.
Who is also a girl in disguise. And this bit kind of, it didn't really like make sense to me, because her friend recognizes her immediately and no one else does.
I mean, I don't know what do they say, like they went to school together or something like that?
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah?
Because, yeah, like you go through, as an adult, you go through life and you don't really pay attention to kids.
Okay.
And especially in that world where it's like they don't really matter socially, kids. I mean, they barely matter here, but they really don't matter that. And so the only person
that's going to pay attention is other kids.
Also, she went through the same thing, so she may be looking out for, friends who are dressed as boys.
The subplot, by the way, is the story within a story, is about a boy who lives in a village, and evil monsters come and take away their seeds for next year's harvest.
Yeah.
And everybody's upset, and the boy declares that he is not afraid and he is going to go get the seeds back.
Yeah, and the main boss is an elephant.
Terrifying elephant. What did you think about the name choice?
Oh, that
Pavana.
Fire.
Yeah.
Atfa, something like that.
Atesh.
Atesh, there we go. It means fire.
Yeah.
That was
Do you
cool.
think it's significant in any way? I didn't really. No. Okay, just say no. No, you didn't really. You're the theme guy.
It could have been, but they didn't really run with it.
Yeah.
She didn't have that, like, kind of...
I thought when I first watched it, it was going to be like the spark that ignites change.
Oh.
And that was the idea of she was going to be fire. That didn't happen. But again, like, I like that about it. I like, it wasn't this big, by the end, success story where the government is overthrown. It's just, this is what's actually happening to people.
I thought it was more to do with her temperance.
Okay.
I thought that was the idea, but it doesn't really come out until the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. She's not really like kicking ass and taking names and chewing bubblegum or whatever.
Yeah, eating sweets from the floor.
Yeah, I wrote down not seeing a happy ending coming. This was the middle of the film.
Yeah, accurate.
Can we get out the jokes so if they don't work at all?
Oh my god.
I'm just gonna cut this segment
I'm
out.
so terrified. I've never been more scared. I think the better thing to do would just be to cut it there. It doesn't matter what the jokes are. Just come back to us at the end being like, no.
Just a big bleep. I like a bit of variety in moods.
Okay.
And so, like, I was entertaining myself with jokes during this film. And one thing was, so, like, this story kind of reminded me of Mulan.
I don't think I've seen Mulan.
It's,
I know the story.
you know the story.
Yeah.
So I thought she needs, like, a Eddie Murphy dragon companion. I'm like, come on, girl, let's go. Let's go to the market.
Let's go bribe a prison guard.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. Dishonor. Dishonor on your whole family. Make a note of this. Dishonor on you. Dishonor on your cow.
Stop.
Just, yeah. And the other one was, I think it was after she meets her friend.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to be like a Life of Brian kind of situation where everyone turns out to be women and they just have fake beards? just everyone in society is like a fake man.
It's in the market still, and everyone's just peeling off their beards. I'm a woman too.
Yeah.
So am I.
Yeah.
Who threw that stone? Come on.
I don't want to trivialize this movie.
No, but I think it is important to have like some like.
Unlike this movie,
Yeah.
some levity. I was desperately needing something. I was like so miserable, and I know that's the point.
This is the point where you see that she's the breadwinner because she's doing a various amount of jobs. She's a tea boy. She's works in a factory. She digs holes.
Yeah, she shovels dirt from one pile to the other pile.
Yeah.
Just reminds me of my student jobs.
And what she's trying to do at this point is save up enough money for a bribe. She's trying to bribe the prison guard to let her see her father and potentially get him out of the prison.
Yes.
So that's what she tries to do. She goes to the prison and she tries to bribe the guard, and there's not enough money.
Yeah.
It seems like the walk to the prison is a good few hours. So she walks all the way out there, and basically the prison guard just punches her in the gut and tells her to go away.
Yeah.
So she goes back to the market. She actually manages to sell her the dress. That's how she gets the money.
Yeah. And this is why I wrote down, I hate haggling.
Yeah.
I hate haggling.
Haggling is such a weird thing.
It
that
is.
people-
And it's a very common thing in that kind of culture. They don't bat an eye. It's just like that's how it goes. Like
Yeah.
the actual price is what they probably something where they settled. Is that where the guy who can't read comes in?
Yeah.
So, yeah, this guy comes in who just sits down next to Parwana and asks her to read a letter for him
Yes.
because he can't read. One thing I noted, which I'm not sure it was intentional, I think I choose that it's an intentional choice, is that this guy looked almost exactly like the father. Like in
No.
he did.
No.
He did.
He was
He was bigger, but
was
that's the only thing.
bigger and rounder.
That was
and
the
he
only thing.
was. I mean, it's a cartoon, so he looked to me to be around mid-30s, early 40s.
He was younger and his beard was black, but
He's younger, bigger. His beard was black.
okay.
And
He had the exact same eyes. He had the exact same ears. He had the exact same shape of mustache coming out from his nose. He just looked so much like the father.
I did not get that
I
at
did.
all.
I did. I'm just hoping that it's intentional. Like they're trying to say like, oh, he's a father figure, kind of thing.
Okay. So Pavana and her friend Shazia are coming home from a hard day's work, and they sit on the tanks and they talk about.
Is this where the free-handed woman comes in? Free-armed
Yes.
woman.
Yeah.
I just wrote down free-armed woman funny. Like I was like just desperate for any kind of like visual funny levity. Again, it reminded me of old socialist cartoons where it's like almost like a visual gag where we see things from her point of view and she puts up her finger, puts up the next finger, and then puts up the third finger.
Yeah, so the 3 things that she puts her finger up for, because in the story, the boy has to find 3 things. He has to find something that shines, something that ensnares, and something that soothes.
Yeah, I'd love that little. This is what we talked about earlier. Is my favorite visual from the film. It's these like old communist tanks, just like halfway buried, and there's just so much of it, and you can see a lot on the horizon as well. I just want that as like a poster. That's like really cool imagery.
So, not just the image of these 2 kids playing on the tanks, but there's also, at this point, Shazia has a photo, and she tells Pavana about her dream, about how she's going to save up enough money to move to the coast and work for tourists and get loads of money. And this is why I think it's good that they didn't show her growing up, because the idea is that these kids have dreams, and if you show later on whether or not they fulfill them, then it kind of loses its edge a little bit.
Yeah, I just feel like that's one possible kind of solution to my problem in this movie. There's lots of avenues that could have been taken, and they weren't.
Yeah.
Shazia, she's my favorite character.
Yeah.
She's the only one who brings some levity into the movie later. When she gets involved, is that when she gets involved in the story?
I think so, yeah, and there's the horse.
Yeah, there's the horse, and there's like, oh my god, finally something like just nice and like,
Yeah.
That's when I just like, because I was so tense up until then. It's just so tense and miserable and horrible. It's just like finally something,
This is where, in the midst of this incredibly sad film, you get some foreboding as well. Because as they're sitting on the tanks, you start seeing jets flying overhead.
I think I wrote after this, because we go back to miserable, to a little levity.
Yeah.
I said, I'd rather just imagine the end.
Okay.
I don't want to see. I don't want to see what happens.
The illiterate friend comes and pays Pavana, because obviously he got some terrible news last time, and he just got up and walked away upset, and he came back and he paid her, and she explains to him her situation. She says that her uncle is in prison, and the illiterate guy says, oh, I have a cousin that works there, go there on Wednesday and ask for him, and say I sent you. So it goes back to the girl's job, and this is where they're digging. They're just moving stuff from one pile of dirt to another pile of dirt.
Yeah.
It's not really clear why. One of them collapses in exhaustion, and because they've collapsed in exhaustion, the boss comes over and tries to get them to work. But the boss is Idris, the Taliban guy from earlier, and he recognizes Pavana as the girl.
Yeah. Idris, he becomes like a 90s cartoon villain.
Okay.
Where he just goes like foaming at the mouth.
Yeah.
Angry, trying to shoot the girls.
Yeah, he does. They hide in the little cave.
Yeah, he hide in a little cave that is an entrance to a temple.
Apparently.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Like Afghanistan has a lot of like cultural stuff that has been like blown to bits.
Pavana, she runs home after she escapes from Idris by hitting him with a brick and running home. And
also they are going away for the revolution. They're driving away.
Yes, true.
They're calling us.
The family have got a letter from their cousin, and the cousin wasn't very clear to me that if the cousin had found someone to marry Nuria, the sister, or the cousin was marrying.
Yeah,
Nuria?
was marrying. Yeah.
Okay.
In a war setting, it makes sense to be families to be closer and cousin marriages to exist.
Okay. And they leave in 2 days. And I believe this is like on a Monday, I guess, because Pavana doesn't want to leave until she gets to see her father. So she leaves Wednesday morning because the guy coming to pick them all up is due in the afternoon. So she leaves in the morning to go back to the prison. She's desperate at this point. She goes to see Shazia and says goodbye to her. Shazia gets upset, but ends up giving her like all the money she has, all the money she saved for.
Yeah, that was a weird scene but it kind of made sense because they're kids. Because at first Shazia was like upset. I felt like she's just walking away, and then it didn't take much convincing to
Yeah.
to stay and just give her all the money. So it's like a complete 180 in like a few seconds. But kids.
Yeah, I felt the same about that whole thing, about the whole scene. They arranged to meet 20 years from today.
Yeah.
Would you have liked to have seen that scene? Would that added a little bit more depth for you?
Well, concerning how in 20 years later, it just same thing happens again.
Yeah.
Wouldn't. I wanted to get about this at the end. Is like, it doesn't really get much better. In fact, it gets worse.
Cool. Bleak, but accurate. Pavana's going to the prison, and back home, the man coming to take them away turns up, and he refuses to wait for anyone. He is an arsehole, start to finish. At no point does he not be an arsehole. He's because you can kind of see his rush, because there is a war coming. There's people invading, and they want to get out of Dodge before it is, but he is a dick.
Yeah, I kind of felt like there is actually like a sub-narrative there, which is that guy is Taliban. The family kind of realizes that based on his behavior
Okay,
towards women.
You think he's close enough to Idris's character,
Yeah.
for it to be a parallel.
I felt like he was so disrespectful to women that he's kind of giving himself away as a Taliban, and that's why the family doesn't want to go with him anymore, even with the war troubles. I think that was something there about that.
Okay. Pavana makes it to the prison. She knocks on the door, and she's asking for the guy, and the illiterate man answers the door, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And she's like, "It's Wednesday. I've come to see my father." But at this point, the prison is being emptied.
Yeah.
Doesn't tell you this, but the implication is they've gone to the prison and they're looking for fighters. Anyone who wants to fight joins. Anyone who doesn't want to fight gets shot. And the illiterate guy begrudgingly agrees to help her.
Yeah.
He says, "If I'm not here by the time it gets dark, just leave."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but she doesn't. She waits there. At this point, because when I was writing my notes, it was like I broke it into 3 different things. So I was like, family, Pavana, story, like the sub-story. Writing this note, I was like, family, this, sub-story, this, prison, this, family, this, prison, sub-story, prison, family, and I completely lost track.
I'm not surprised you get headaches.
So I did manage to break it down, and all of this happens at once from now on. So I don't know, which part do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about the story, because it's the least important?
Yeah, let's talk about that. This is where it kind of falls on its face.
Yep.
So the kid in the story makes it up to the mountain and uses, like typical folktale fashion. He uses his things that he gathered
Yep.
to defeat some of the monsters.
The thing that shines is the mirror, and he shines it against the sun and blinds them.
Yeah.
And while the monsters are falling down, he uses his net that he got somewhere to ensnare them. So it's just him against the monster.
Yeah, and that part I liked, which is that is paralleled to Parwana like knocking really hard at the door. It's like, let me in. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, that kind of made sense, which is it's her sheer kind of force and her sheer kind of very strong emotions for her father come out, and she's not gonna stop even through insurmountable odds. But then the story kid meets the boss elephant.
Yep. The boy in the story, by the way, is named Suleiman.
Yes.
Suleiman was the main story, Pavana's older brother.
Yes.
That died. Kind of explains how he died at the end.
Yeah, so that's where it falls flat to me.
Yeah.
Because the boy in the story defeats the animal by speaking truth of, like, I'm Suleiman and I found this toy and it blew up. And this is how the elephant gets defeated?
I think so, yeah.
It's not really a question, it's just I'm just kind of puzzled. Like,
okay, yeah.
Because it was like the theme crescendoed from this, like, Parwana won this, Parwana doesn't stop. Parwana is like a unstoppable force, and this is contrasted to this character. But at the end, Parwana doesn't house his brother's truth helps her in getting into the prison, in getting his father back.
No, I thought it was kind of like a story wish fulfillment type deal. Like it was her telling a story about her brother being a brave and noble person, someone who would help the villagers, who would fight, monsters, who would try and save everyone. And it's her coming to terms with the fact that he was a good person. He tried to maybe fight injustice somehow, and it just ended for him. He found a toy in the street, it exploded, and that's the last thing he remembers.
But the problem is, this is quickly intercut with her banging on the door of a prison.
Yeah.
And it doesn't quite gel together, you know?
Yeah, I see your point.
You might be right, but then how does that relate to what Parvana is going through right now? How's the brother's truth and the prison getting the father back is connected?
It's everybody's story. So it's Pavana's story is the main story, and Suleiman's story is the sub story, and they conclude at the same time.
That's not good enough. Like, if you watch Lil Nicky and Atomic Blonde, and then they end at the same time, they're two stories that conclude at the same time. They have nothing to do with each other. It's not good enough. Like, up until then, there was a parallel.
Yeah.
Of her overcoming obstacles and him overcoming obstacles, and at the end it just misses the mark.
Okay, I do see your point, but I think the way it speaks to me is that you have these two parallel stories, and by fate or luck or anything, some make it, some don't, and that's the point.
Don't like it.
Okay. Prison or family?
Family.
Okay, because we should end in Pavana's story, right?
Yes. I wrote down epic mom.
Epic mum. She is an epic mum.
Yeah, I was kind of worried that she's gonna be kind of a cliche character where after she gets beat up, like she's basically out of the movie, or she's gonna be so ill that she's gonna slowly die.
Yeah.
But she recovers and she becomes epic mom.
Yeah, so even though she gets beaten earlier in the film, she still takes a stand.
Yes.
Against the guy that turns up to take them away. So why do they stop the car?
The
engine breaks.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, the engine breaks and they stop. And they all get out of the car and they stand by the side of the road. And the guy says, okay, get back in the car. And she says no.
Yeah.
And he pulls a knife and she pulls a stick out of the fire.
Yeah.
And they have a confrontation.
Yeah. And then it ends with the fire goes out on the stake. And he comes closer and she like grabs the knife by the blade.
Yeah.
Epic mom moment.
That's enough for him to call her crazy.
Yeah.
And just walk away.
I like that.
Yeah, it was nice. See? It's a happy-ish ending. For them, at least.
Should we get into that?
No.
Okay.
No, let's move on. Pavana. So she's at the prison and basically shit's kicking off at the prison.
That should be the name of the movie. Basically, shit's kicking off.
Shit's kicking off. In the distance, you can see all kinds of explosions and madness happen. You can see that some kind of invasion force or defensive force is coming towards them, and they need to get out of Dodge pretty quickly. This I found like a bit odd that they left her outside, because the illiterate guy goes into the prison to find the father. He finds him in like a basement and starts carrying him out, and there's a confrontation between the illiterate guy and the prison guard, where the prison guard points a gun at him because he's pretending that the father's a dead body.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw it with the rest of the dead bodies. But the prison guard doesn't believe him.
Yeah.
And I thought this scene would be better if Pavana was there to see it and to experience it.
Yeah, I think in the story, the guy's rationalization was that it's safer outside than inside.
Yeah, for sure.
There's guns going off. But yeah, you're right. It would have been more dramatic.
And what did you think? Because at the very end of that scene, the illiterate guy lunges at the prison guard. I think you hear a shot.
Yeah.
And then it cuts straight to Pavana.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a good choice? I thought that was a bit like... Because it's pretty much in the next scene, he opens the gate. So you're kind of like, is he dead? Isn't dead? Oh, no, he's not.
It was an okay choice. I didn't mind that. My question was more about the guy. Why would he sacrifice himself?
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't mind that. It was just a last minute kind of dramatic kind of twist. I guess, because everything was so miserable. You'd be sure that the father dies after all that. And then freeze frame. And then, wouldn't it be nice if we were older and we wouldn't have to take so long?
So, set up and payoff. Illiterate guy is shot. He's shot in the arm. Earlier in the film, he tells a story about his wife who passed, and his wife's name was Hola,
Okay, yeah.
and that means there's a specific phenomenon. If you look at the moon through clouds,
Yeah.
the shimmery outside of the clouds.
Yeah, it's kind of like
called
the
Hola.
halo of the moon.
Yeah. After he rescues the father and meets Bafana outside, he looks to the sky and he sees that phenomenon, which is quite nice.
Yeah, but again, was a very surface level. It was set up payoff, but like, what does it say? Nice. That's what it says, you know.
Yeah.
Hope.
Yeah.
But like, and what? You know, that's not enough for me.
I mean, the film pretty much ends here. They push the cart home with the father and they all meet up. And the film ends, but you don't know what happens with this invading force.
Don't you?
Well,
Just read the news.
yeah.
They go from a military dictatorship to a different kind of military dictatorship. Yay! Happiness. They do get some rights for like 20 years, 21 years, and then the Taliban comes back. I was trying to calculate, like, so how old do you think Parwana is?
Oh, it does say she's 11.
Oh, she's 11, okay. I was counting with 8, so let me count again. So 11 plus 21 years. So she has 21 years of kind of freedom.
Yeah.
More freedom than before, like a freedom of a more typical Arab country. 21 years, and then when she's 32, would be now, she's back to the good old Taliban.
Maybe her and her friend Shazia made it to that beach resort in another country and they've set up a beautiful business selling shiny rocks to tourists as they planned.
Scam tourists. No.
No, just no.
Just no.
Just no.
Based on the mood of this movie, no.
Yeah.
They're like,
But that's the thing of it. That's why it ends the way it does. It
they
ends
take
in a
5 more steps and they get shot.
very last part of the film. Here's a quote. I don't know if it's a quote from somewhere, but the last words of the film are, "Raise your words, not your voice. It is the rain that makes the flowers grow, not thunder."
Okay. So be nice.
Be nice and be sensible.
Great. How does that help me in a military dictatorship?
Just does. You know, it shows that even in the face of this, there are people that have nobility and intelligence to them.
Even though it was technically a happy ending, did not get any good emotions from it at all. I was just miserable. I was just thinking like, yeah, great. So they're gonna live in a war now. So I just don't see the happy ending coming.
No.
This is where I go a bit unemotional, and I'm like, no, I want fucking results. I want to see like solutions. I don't want to see emotion of like hope or flowery bullshit. This is like a too desperate situation for that. You need to think about your basics of survival, and you need to find solutions of how you're gonna survive, and that's not good enough for me.
Okay. Thank you for listening to this incredibly depressing episode of I
you
Hate
think
Your Movie.
you think you're gonna get away from? My
Oh God, you got a
recommendation?
recommendation.
Also, our most famous segment. I want to talk about Succession.
Dan wants to talk about Succession.
No, the theme is very good. Listen to the theme song.
First things first, out of 10. I always push you for an out of 10.
Fuck me. This is like the most impossible one.
Okay, maybe not. We'll cut that out.
Because I'll give you my justification for it. Is that, again, it's a movie I really respect, and it's well made, it's well done, but I really don't like it.
Okay.
So how do you justify that two things?
True.
How do you put that into a number? You know, that's why I don't like these out of 10 kind of ratings, because I get complex feelings.
Good, which is what film's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so you're recommending a film?
Well, you showed me a sad.
A sad.
I'll show you a sad.
Go on. Anything you can sad, I can sad better.
We'll have a sad off. Who's the more sad?
As long as we're not watching Requiem for a Dream.
No, but you mentioned it earlier in a different review.
Okay.
Called it Suspiria.
Right.
Well, it's called Suspiria. Suspiria.
It's Suspiria.
I'm Suspiria of you. But yeah, we're gonna watch the remake because there's a chance you'll like that.
Isn't that like 3.5 hours long?
I don't think it's 3.5. I think it's 3 hours.
Okay.
I think you're gonna have like complex thoughts about it. I think you're gonna like the sad because you like the sad. I think you're gonna like that it's grounded, even though there's some supernatural stuff in there. But within that, it's very grounded.
Okay.
You're gonna like the performances probably.
Who's the main person? There's a main person that was very good in that.
Dakota Fanning Johnson.
Yeah.
50 Shades of Grey lady.
Dakota Fanning. Dakota Johnson.
One of those.
There is a Fanning.
Okay, I know.
I like the Fanning people.
I like the Fanning people.
I do like the Fanning.
It's the 50 Shades of Grey. We
There's
talked about her
there's like
before.
2 or 3 Fannings.
No, it's baby. You talked about her before, and you said she's good.
Okay.
50
Dakota
Shades of Grey.
Johnson. Yeah, she is very good.
Yeah, she's good in this. And Tilda Swinton, she's really good in this, and she plays 3 roles, 2 main roles and 1 smaller role.
Okay.
And one of it is an old man in makeup.
Nice.
And it's pretty good old man makeup. And we're watching the remake because I don't want you to hate me forever. I think you'd really hate the original.
Okay. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. It's a film that's on my radar. Don't particularly enjoy horror films, so it'd be good to see it. Awesome.
Score by Thom Yorke. And I call him Thom Yorke because he...
It's THO.
Yeah. So if he doesn't want me to pronounce it Thom, just write it normally, you pretentious asshole. I like your music.
I don't think he got to write his own name.
No?
I don't think he named himself as a baby. Thom Yorke.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
I'm sorry about all the jokes. Please cancel me. Oh, please don't cancel me.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But share. Share it all.
Share it all. Share the love.
Share the love.